You are listening to The Michael Lodge Show. Wealth, business, and taxes. Oh, yeah, and some politics. Let's get started.
And good morning this Saturday. It's a great day, isn't it? I don't know what part of the country you're in, but I'm looking outside, and in South Florida, it's a good day. Nice, cool day. Not hot like it has been over the past couple of days. It's been up in, 81, 82. But today it's nice and cool, the breeze off the ocean. I tell you, if you can live in South Florida, you're lucky. This is the place to be. And I think a lot of people, especially in New York, are saying, you know what? Let's move to South Florida. A lot of individuals have started to come down into South Florida, and the name has been adopted as the Southamptons, because there's so many individuals coming from the Hamptons, and from New York, Manhattan. Investment companies are moving in. We've had so many hedge fund companies move in. We just had another company move in, or starting to move in, moving their whole offices out of Manhattan, out of Wall Street, down to Palm Beach. So things are changing here, and, change is good. You have to accept change. I was listening to an individual this morning on Facebook, and he gives advice on breakups and relationships and everything else that has to do with dating and non-dating and everything else. His name is Ian Idea, and he's on Facebook. He is on YouTube, and he gives some really good ideas. And a lot of what he said this morning, what I listened to him, was on the breakup. When you're dating someone and you go through this breakup, and he had some really good thought process. And he did it in a very good way. I mean, he expressed it so very clearly that it makes you think, you know what, maybe I should, when I broke up, maybe I should have handled it just a little bit differently. So as myself, I'm a mediator, and I mediate business, mostly business, but a lot of times I do separations and divorce. And through that process, what I see is that they don't go too well. They just don't. For some reason, when you get to that point where you're making that decision, okay, we need to separate because this just is not working. So they've made that decision. They know it just is not working, but then they forget to think about how you communicate, how you deal with issues, and everything else. And communication is the key, because communication can set off so much after the separation or even after the divorce, especially if you have children involved. Communication with an ex-spouse or a partner, it's not going to always be easy, because we are human beings, and we've got all this emotional stuff inside us that can either be emotions that lead to love or emotions that lead to hate, and you want to get back at the other person. When you know, because you've probably read all of the books before, that hate and anger, you're just wasting time. So this communication process with an ex-spouse or a partner, it's not going to go easy. And I have to say that over and over again, but you can learn to do some things differently in your communication process that can help you make it through in a more peaceful and more civil way. I tell you, when I'm in mediation, I use those words so often. Let's be peaceful. Let's get through this peacefully. and let's be civil. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I have to get in the middle of things, put them into a room all by themselves, and talk the process out. But for the benefit of your children, especially if you have children, the one thing communication should always aim to be is effective. And we forget about this effectiveness of how we can be in our communication process. You and I, we can be as dumb as possible, and we can write these big long emails that are pages, and on sometimes I've even seen them to be a book. Instead of shortening them down to like 25 words or less, and getting right to the point of the question and a response. The longer you go, the more anger builds up. Take the question that comes over the text and sit there for 5 minutes, put it to the side for 5 minutes, go do something else, and then come back in a more calmer situation and think about what your response is going to be, but make it short and quick. Ineffective communication, whether that's due to feelings of anger or confusion, or maybe you're just a nervous person, can really lead to unneeded stress and conflict. And in mediation, I deal with conflict daily. In business, there's conflict. In work situations, there are conflicts that build. In relationships, there are conflicts that build. And if you don't address that conflict very quickly, it can grow and it can be very costly. So communication and trying to be effective is the best way to be. That's why I always say keep your responses and your answers and your questions less than 25 words, because that way you are focused on what you want to know or what you want to send back. When you and your co-parent struggle to accomplish what needs to be accomplished, not only does co-parenting become more difficult, but children may also feel the effects of disorganized shared parenting. When you have really bad communication process, you have disorganized parenting. I've seen it over and over and over again, where sometimes even the parenting is so disorganized and so angry and so miscommunicated that it affects that child so greatly that we have to put them into counseling because they have been affected by your bad parenting technique of communication. Communication, listen, when you spout out words, it's very difficult to ever take those words back. In fact, you can't take them ever back. Because words are out there and they're living and they're stuck in people's brains and minds. So we, as individuals, we have to be very careful about how we communicate. We have to be effective at it. And we certainly cannot be disorganized. But I see it happening all the time. And that's why when I'm mediating, I have to sit down with both couples, both individuals, and I have to say, come on, let's talk about communication. Let's talk about communication. For the sake of giving your children a happier and a healthier childhood, with both of you parents involved, applying effective communication techniques to your conversations with your co-parent, it will be to your advantage. And even if you're single, if you're going through a breakup, focus on how you're communicating. Are you disorganized and making the situation worse? Communication is so key in every single relationship, especially when you are breaking up, when you are separating, and when you're going through that divorce process. The first building block of effective communication after divorce or a breakup is commitment from you and your co-parent to raise your kids together in a healthy environment free of conflict. Remember, communication creates conflict. So the first thing that you have to do when you go through that breakup or separation or divorce, focus on your communication. Because if you communicate badly, you're going to create conflict. Remembering this commitment to communication can help you and the other co-parent, the other parent, reach an effective parenting partnership. With that commitment always in mind, you can turn your attention towards establishing the other building blocks of effective communication. That's the way it has to be. Our language, the delivery of our language, has to be focused on. So I'm telling you right now, if you are breaking up or if you are separating or if you're going through divorce, focus on your language and how you're delivering that language. Because if you're not, and what comes out is nothing but disorganized communication process, you will have conflict over and over and over again. Effective communication greatly relies on language and word choice. I know, I've been there. I've been there with you guys. I have gone through these relationships myself, and I look back and I say, damn, I should have communicated better. I should have thought about the choice of language or words that I was using. Choose the right words to properly convey what you need to say, and avoid the language that serves no other purpose than to hurt the other person. This would include name-calling, vulgar language, sarcasm, pointing fingers. I know, I see it all the time in my mediation. And I have to get them back to the point of, come on, let's focus on how we're communicating, because this name-calling and everything else doesn't do anything. It just delays the process of getting you to and through a successful separation. Choose the right words. Think about it. That's why I want to go back to that 25 words or less. Focus on those 25 words. Ask the question. Provide a response in 25 words or less, because then you don't go off onto a tangent and begin calling the other people name and blaming the other person. Then there's this thing called delivery. You know, comedians are really good at their delivery, right? They know exactly when to say the right word, pause, get that laughter going, and coming down to the conclusion of the joke so that we all get it and we are happy and we're laughing and we know how the outcome was, because the comedian chose the right words in a specific way and he delivered it right on point. Now, I'm not saying that if you're going through a separation or divorce that you're going to be a comedian. It might help, but that's just not going to happen. Delivery. I tell you, it's an important word in the process of our communication. Just like how word choice is important, the way you deliver those words is just as relevant towards building an effective communication process. Your method of delivery, the tone of voice, and timing are all aspects to consider when communicating. Choose a method that allows you to accurately deliver your message, depending on what you're talking about and how well your communication, how well you communicate verbally with your co-parent, face-to-face, on the phone, conversations, texting, emails. It may not always be the best way to convey certain messages. So you have to think about and be creative about that. Now, what I like, and most of the courts around the nation are starting to do this. There's an app out there, and there's several apps, but the app that I like, so I'm going to talk about just the app that I like, is Civil Communicator. Civil Communicator takes your words as you type them. It goes up, somebody reviews it, and they take out all of the words that could be misconstrued or could develop anger or tension, and then relays it on. If they feel that the message is too strong or too angry, they won't let the message go through. And then you have to rethink about it. You have to rethink the process of what you were just trying to say, but tone it down and become more civil. I love these apps. And not only that, but in the communication process, the message goes out, the message comes back. But you can also upload your children's schoolwork. You can upload health documents and medical documents and everything else. And so that everybody is in the right spot. I tell you, one of the biggest communication process is on when an individual has their children for a week, let's say, and something happens. They tend sometimes, not everybody, but a good portion of parents do this, is they hold back information. And so when you have an app like Civil Communicator or whatever app that you want to use, it makes it so much easier because now you can communicate in a direct way, but very civil way. And everybody has the same information. Let's get back to the delivery. Sometimes we are writing these emails, right? And I have seen some of your emails, and they go on and on and on and around and around and circle after circle, and nothing ever gets accomplished. And the response that comes back from the other side is the same way. It goes on and around and circles, and nothing is getting done because the communication process and the delivery of that communication is so bad. Listen, the tone of written communication isn't all based on word choice, punctuation, speaks volumes. Using all capital letters, quotation marks, underlining, and other punctuation can change the tone of your written voice in a way that may be unintended, and it can result in getting nothing done, except creating more anger, creating more frustration. The key word, it creates conflict. Finally, on timing can have a huge impact on how a person receives a message. Have you ever gotten an email from a coworker and you're thinking, how dare that person say that? Who does that individual think he is to say that to me? And that's not what the email was even trying to say. But you took it in a different way because you read it differently. Your thought process was running amok. The delivery of how we speak to people, and how we write to people, and how we text to people, has got to be thought about more. Because the delivery and how you form your words and sentences can do so much damage very quickly. It may offend the other individual or even offend you. Now, one of the other aspects, and I give this lecture at the beginning of every single separation agreement mediation that I'm doing. And even in business, I tell these individuals, I want you to listen. Listen, take notes, write down notes, but listen. it's so amazing to me that sometimes what the other individual is saying is exactly what the other person wants to say, but they're not listening, and so the communication process comes and gets heard in the wrong way because they're not listening. They are already forming their opinion or their next statement in their mind, but they're not listening. How many times are you in a conversation with somebody and you're talking to that individual, and all of a sudden he starts talking back at you, and you weren't able to express what you really wanted to say because he had already formed an opinion and he already started responding. He was not listening to what you were saying. And I know that you've done it too. I'm sorry, I got to get a cup of coffee. Just a second. I tell you, coffee's so good, isn't it? Coffee can soothe out any communication problems. If you and I are having difficulties, just hand me a cup of coffee. I'm good. I'm happy. We can sit there and we can laugh. But the most important thing is that you have to listen. Listening is such a key point of mediation. I have to listen very carefully because as I'm listening, I'm taking notes and trying to form the issues that individual is trying to communicate out. Sometimes they communicate very badly, but I can still, because I'm listening, I can still pick through the garbage and get to the good stuff that I need to save. And you need to learn how to do the same thing. Listening is so very important. There's this word attentive, right? Be attentive during conversations. Listening carefully or completely reading messages you receive. Don't jump to respond. Never jump, never jump, never jump. Sit back, go get a cup of coffee. I'll make you a cup of coffee if you need one, if you're in that situation. But don't jump and automatically respond because you're going to say the wrong thing because you didn't think the process through of what you wanted to respond back. You responded back in an emotional anger and you didn't respond back in a way that was able to convey what you wanted to say. 25 words or less. I'm telling you, so you can focus on what you need to say. Or the question that you need to ask. Don't jump to respond. How many times do I have to tell that to individuals? Don't jump to respond. Listen to the very end. Listen to the very end. Don't start formulating your own opinions and what you want to say because you've just shut them out. You shut off their communication once you have started that process. Listen to the end. Read to the end. Sit back and don't respond quite so fast. Think about it. Don't jump to respond. Take a moment to take in what you've heard, then formulate your response. The most important thing is that formulation of your response. Don't be angry. Respond civilly. Organize your thoughts. 25 words or less. If you don't know what to say or feel as if you're about to explode, it is okay to say that you need to talk about this later. It's okay to say that. Don't forget the conversation, though. Come back to it when you are ready to focus and give a very calm, effective response. You see, in this whole communication process with breakups, with separations and divorce, it's all about the communication process. And the other issue is that you need to think about how you're handling the situation. You've got to make some clear social decisions, on how you're going to live your life moving forward. Are you going to be the angry, the vindictive, where you want to get the other person back? Or are you going to be the individual who says, okay, it has ended. I'm moving forward. I am going to improve my life in the way that I communicate. I'm going to get through this, and I am going to become a much better person. You're the one that chooses. You're the one that gets to choose how they communicate. I always talk about this in business, and I talk about it in relationships when I'm dealing with breakups and separations and divorce in mediation. The word is consistency. Consistency. It's probably one of the most important words in our life as we go through life is consistency. And if we are consistent in everything that we do and say. If you're trying to overcome poor communication habits consistently, practicing effective communication techniques. I have a real problem with that word for some reason, techniques. Maybe because I have none. But practicing effective communication techniques will be the key to you making real and lasting change. And that not only in a breakup or anything else, but also in business. If you're consistent with your message, consistent with your story, consistent in how you practice throughout the day in your business, consistency is what gets you to that winning line that you need to cross over to get to the other side. Set yourself up. Set yourself up for success through consistency. Set yourself up for success by always having a clear picture of why you're trying to change the way you communicate. And then I want you to practice and follow the next techniques. 1, commit to regularly checking in with your co-parent about your children. Plan for conversations ahead of time in order to give it your full attention. Be consistent about sharing concerns you may have right away. Don't let issues or bad feelings fester up and become ugly. Maintain open lines of communication so you can work together as a team rather than unknowingly countering each other's efforts. As long as you are dedicated to creating a better life for your kids, the building blocks of effective communication after divorce or after separation are easy to put into practice. Language, delivery, listening, and consistency are elements that can help to improve the way that you and your co-parent communicate, which will always help you to build a more solid relationship as partners in parenting. Communication, I tell you, is vital. That's one of the lectures I give in mediation is how to communicate better. We set up rules and objectives on the communication process. We put apps in place so that it makes the communication process easier for both to do. But I tell you, it's that emotions of being a human being. I tell you, we run through a whole bunch of emotions when we are humans. And one of them is that anger mode, and that frustration mode, and that feeling that you really want to get back and sock it to them. But it doesn't do anything good when you think through that process. the most important thing for you to do is to focus on your communication process. I tell you, if you can focus on your communication process with your co-parent or the individual who you are separating from, life is boundless. I mean, you can almost do anything. If you have developed a good communication process with the person that has driven you crazy, just think what you can do in business or anything else. Learn to communicate better. I think that every single one of us, we know all this already, but we get so wrapped up in our own hurt, our own pain, that we take it out and we lash out on the other person. Even though we know what the right way to do it is, sometimes just because we're so in so much pain and suffering, if you want to call that word, that we lash out. And the easiest way to do it is through words. But if you really want to have success, focus on your communication. Remember, it's very important. I've just given you the building blocks on how to do it. I hope you took notes. I hope that if you really want to develop your communication skills, go out. There's some good classes on communication online. There's some good books on communication. We just need to use them. We need to find them and start applying them to the way we communicate. Remember what it is. Language, delivery, listening, and consistency. And all these elements. I believe you can do it. I know I've seen couples turn around completely in the way that they communicate, and it becomes much smoother. It's a much better process. It's if they have learned to become such a good communicator that now they are a team member of trying to raise these kids. They're no longer battling each other, going head to head. And listen, if you are single and if you have broken up, or if you have been dumped, don't worry about it. Don't take it so emotionally that it destroys your whole life and you want to destroy somebody else's life. Practice what I just said on communication and start communicating with yourself and saying, I need to become a better person, so I'm going to focus on that. I am going to become the best individual that I can possibly be. I have so much to work on. I have so much I can do professionally, creatively. I'm going to focus on that. Now it's all about me. And even when you're going through divorce or separation, it's time to focus on you. What are the areas that you can develop? One is communication. We already know that. So that's your first objective, is to become a good communicator. But what else is there for you? What have you been wanting to do in life? What has been your dreams? What has this dream that you've had to start a business? I mean, or start a mission, or to start a church, or to begin tutoring for children. I mean, there's a whole bunch out there, right? That are such good things to do that you've always wanted to do because they've been in the back of your mind, but you just haven't done it because you've had other things that kept you tied down. Focus about you. Focus about your communication process. If you can develop a good communication process, you have the whole world open to you. I'm telling you the truth on this. Listen, if you like the podcast and the content that I provide, help me out by supporting me at www.buymeacoffee.com/Michael Lodge. If you have any questions, you can send me a text at 818-252-5682 or send me an email at info@lodge-co.com. I'll be more than happy. Anything you send me, I promise you I respond. You may not like what I say, But listen, I'm a good communicator. I keep it down to 25 words or less, if I can. Listen, we got through this week, right? We had St. Patrick's Day. We all dressed up in green. No one got pinched. We communicated it very well. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Now we have the weekend ahead of us. What are you going to do? How are you going to focus on becoming a better communicator? We all can work on it together. If you have any questions on that, just let me know. I'll blurt it out to you. Oh, I shouldn't say that. When good communication, we don't blurt things out, but I will thoughtfully provide you with a response. Listen, this is Mike Lodge. Life is tough, but we can make it through. I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye. This podcast is produced by Michael Lodge, fully focused on content. Hi, this is Mike Lodge of The Michael Lodge Show. Join me on iHeartRadio and other podcast stations as we talk about wealth, business, and taxes. Oh, and some politics. Join me every day on the podcast that keeps focused on business.